audio enough?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Wednesday, 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. You know what I'm about to say next. It is a time for our live Q&A. Every week at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays, we go live and we interact with our subscribers and viewers and our past and current and future clients, trying to help them navigate this crazy Canadian immigration world. As always, there are three of us, Mark, Alicia, and I. And how are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Any
Yeah.
Holding in there,
news?
Igor.
Any news from your professional or personal life that you wanted to share with the viewers? Any
Mhm.
updates?
I'm pretty grumpy right now, Igor, about the Alberta teacher strike and the fact that my kid's not learning at the moment. So
Mhm.
I'm just going to steer away from that political mess. But yeah, that's going on in Alberta right now.
Yeah, it's very interesting how it correlates with the federal government trying to attract teachers and creating this education category. We've been talking about this over and over again, but it just doesn't make sense, right? Um, let's see. What did we have happening um, in immigration during the last week? I think there was a
Well,
drop.
shockingly, Igor, I was so astounded. Like I couldn't believe my eyes. But there was a French draw.
Mm-hmm.
So amazing. I just so amazing.
Yeah, and we
And it was
actually
just
had two
another and it
draws.
was another tiny one. Only 4,500 people.
Mm-hmm.
I just mm,
Yeah,
I
mm.
think Igor, I think Mark's grumpy too. So yeah, we're all a little bit sarcastic this morning. So yeah, there's a huge French draw, right? We haven't had a big draw since the last big French draw. So what's that causing? It's causing those CRS scores to really go down. And so I don't know about you, Mark and Igor, but I've had a ton of consults with people who are trying to figure out if they have an option to come to live in Canada, many of whom are American, many of whom are actually American healthcare workers or physicians, and they can't get enough points. And they can't get enough points because if you look at what's been happening with our draws, it's been French. There's been a couple of the education draws. There was a small trade occupation draw, which is out of the usual because there hasn't really been trade draws recently. But people simply can't get the points that are required under a federal skilled worker unless they also happen to fall within a targeted category.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And as we look at these totals, like you, Alicia, I've had consultations with professionals. I know just yesterday I spoke with a teacher. She's actually completing her PhD, but she was by profession a high school teacher, and her husband is an attorney in the U.S. And they were looking for pathways to be able to come to Canada, and thought, oh, this should be a slam dunk, no problem. Of course, they want us. And we went through and looked at their point thresholds. And I said, well, which one of you is going to start learning French? And that was the reality, because as I cover in my course, and I've done a number of presentations over the last year and a half, maybe almost 2 years now. We are in the golden age of Francophone immigration within Canada. And this is the policy decision that our government has made to try to expand French language across the country, which I don't think anyone would disagree with. We're a bilingual country, but it is really affecting anyone that does not speak French who wants to immigrate. And with the removal of points for job offers, anyone outside of the country is going to be pretty hard pressed to qualify for an ITA unless they speak French, full stop. There just isn't going to be a possibility. And it makes sense to some extent that they would focus on the folks in Canada, because even people in Canada are struggling so badly, and there just are not enough spots, like we've talked about repeatedly, for the individuals that are here. So these are dark days of immigration.
During the last live stream, Mark, we've noticed some very interesting trend. So the last three CEC draws were exactly 1,000 people, and the score was consistent through all three draws. It was 534.
Yeah.
Is it just a mere coincidence? Do they have like a specific threshold where people fall at 534 and they cannot go up.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, but it's very interesting how they've conducted 3 CC draws and invited only 3,000 people, but then with one francophone draw they invited like 20-30% more than that.
Yeah.
Just unexplainable.
Well, let's not also forget that a sizable portion of those 1,000, Igor, also speak French.
Yeah.
So it is, yeah, it's if you want to be able to come to Canada, study French.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe you have some insights. There's a question from Alice. Is there any
Mhm.
data from which countries are the French draw candidates coming from?
I'm not sure. I suspect that the government has. I don't know if they've released that granular level of detail on the actual rounds of invitations and the source countries. Um, I don't know, Alicia, if you have any thoughts on that.
I know that they do release overall PR numbers, but I don't think they break it down to the public for categories. So they will say in every given year how many people were landed from all the countries, like this country, this country, this country around the world. So they do have that data that they release in their annual report. So they have a report to Parliament. But I don't think they break it down within, for example, a Francophone draw, right? They'll just say that these are the source countries.
Yeah, my guess is most of those francophones are not coming from France. Just
Mhm.
having gone to Europe for a vacation last month, I can tell life in Europe is a lot cheaper than in Canada, and I don't know how to incentivize people from France to apply and come here, like in mass numbers. So I suspect it's like other francophone speaking countries, like in Caribbean and Africa. Um, I think Vietnam is also like one of those large French speaking countries, actually. So I'm not sure. All right. I also wanted to pull up few more questions, and I don't know. We don't get many questions in the chat. So for those people who are watching,
Yeah.
I highly encourage that you share your comments. Otherwise, we'll just have to talk about random
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. And you don't want to get Alicia and I talking today here in our grumpy moods.
Yeah, we want you to direct and administer this discussion.
Yeah. And give us
Before
a
we.
shout out too, you guys. Give us a shout out. Let us know where you're tuning in from.
Mhm.
It was, when we first started this live stream years ago, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I would say a sizable portion of those tuning in were all over the world. And it was fun to see where people were connecting in, people that were so dedicated, some 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning. And now I think by and large, we've got probably 80% or more that are here in Canada, just searching for answers, searching for insight, trying to get some idea as to the trends. And when you're trying to figure out what you should do, it's really, really important to be able to be accurate in how you're predicting or trying to understand where the government is going with their decision making. So I'll give you an example is before we get to some of our like Brie and some of the awesome comments that we have here. But I remember when category-based draws first started coming out, and those of you who've watched this have heard this story before. But the one individual from India in finance who left finance, went to a welding shop in Ontario and said, "Teach me to weld. I'll work for free." And he knew that the writing was on the wall. He was not going to be getting an ITA with that background. It just wasn't an occupation in demand. But he knew trade levels draws were lower. And so he worked literally for free for 5 months to the point where the company said, "Okay, well, you've got some skills. We'll start paying you and you can work as a welder." In Ontario, it's a little different than other provinces like Alberta, where welding is a compulsory trade where you actually have to have trade certification. But in Ontario, it's not that. So as long as you're fulfilling the requirements, you're performing the duties. And so he did that for another 6 months. And then on the 7th month, he got an invitation to apply. And so what happens now, and you can see the moment someone figures something out, then everybody slides over to that direction. And then once everybody slides over to that direction, then that process no longer becomes as open as it used to be. In other words, the more competition results in the scores still staying high. And so now that everybody has figured out French, the reality is I don't envision the scores coming down substantially because more and more people are increasing their points 1 or 2 or maybe 5 or 10 or some of you that are really fortunate and reach that CLB level 7, or you're probably hitting around 60 or high 60s with the 50 points and then the extra points for French as a second language. So that is what's having a big impact on people in Canada, still pushing the CRS scores up above 530 for the general CEC draws. And of course, the Francophone, that is one where people outside of the country are still going to be able to get in, because if you look at that last draw, it was in the 430s, right? And so technically what that means is most of those people are probably pretty fluent in French. And so there's probably between 60 to 70 points up for grabs for them. And then you add that on, they're in the mid 300s, really, and they're eligible. So what else can you say about that, right? It's just so critical now.
Yeah. Speaking on this strategic advice, not advice, but strategic tips, right, from Mark. I wanted to pull up the comment from the countdown. I did my interview. By interview, I mean, I think
consult.
The countdown meant the consult. With Mark and Alicia at one point, when I was going through my process, do not hesitate to book your consult. And no, I'm not getting paid for this. You're absolutely not getting paid for this.
And if you go to the earlier one, Igor, there was an earlier comment as well where she talked a little bit about herself. So, yeah.
So it's Bri Fox from Halifax. It's been a long time since I've checked in. Mark, I did a referral for a friend who did consult with you recently. I'm an affiliate too.
You bet. Thank you so much, Bri. I really appreciate we really appreciate your referrals. And that's something else that I want to talk about. In the early days, once again, of this whole venture, I had staff that said, "Oh, Mark, you're wasting your time. Like we're not getting any responses from this. You're spending these hours responding to questions in the Facebook group." We had the private Facebook group that's still sits on the surface at about 115,000 people, but it's basically useless. So we switched over to YouTube, but I'd spend hours, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, just answering questions nonstop until I stumbled upon live streaming and being able to answer questions live, where as many people as possible can benefit who watch this as a recording. And so we went through that whole process, and it's been so fun to watch where the sources of our new clients come from. And initially it was Facebook, then it moved over to YouTube, and now what's making a real run at the top is referrals from past clients and other lawyers and consultants. And so we are so grateful for every single person that you guys have faith in to refer to us. And we hope that referral is something that those people say, wow, that was a good experience. So thank you so much for those referrals, especially Bri. Thank you.
Yeah. And on this note, I probably would pull up our website and just tell people where to find the reviews and what people think about the services that we provide. So you can go to our website and you can see we have 254 reviews, 4.9 average, and just check what people are saying. Like we even have this AI generated summary for you if you don't have time. But
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, or you can also find us on Google and read the reviews in here. There is some very positive reviews that we're really proud of. All right. On this note, let's give a couple of shout outs. So Lao Pacha says hi. M. Shi says hi. And then we do have a couple of questions that are piled up. I'll start with the question from Vanessa. So I've submitted my EE profile while being in Cameroon, but I traveled to Korea after receiving the ITA, then did medicals there. Do I need to attach a letter of explanation for the change in location since it's a temporary stay?
Do you want to tackle that one, Alicia?
Well, let's see.
Oh, I think Alicia's frozen.
Yeah.
She's got a smile there. She's tricking us.
Oh, it's so still.
Okay, well, Alicia's kind of froze, but that's okay. That's good. She's filling that space. She'll be back to join us shortly here. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of where you complete your medicals, it really does not matter. So in your situation, there isn't a need to attach an LOE for the change in location. Ultimately, any panel physician can do that for you, and then there isn't any real need to attach an LOE.
Yeah. Same with biometrics, right? Like there are some countries where they don't even have the visa application center, so you need to travel somewhere abroad to
Yeah.
complete your biometrics. Or maybe
Yeah.
there's like a medical doctor who's not available. Maybe he's on a sick leave, or vacation leave, and you need to travel somewhere. Absolutely fine. All right. Let's see. What are the other questions? So, I think we pulled up the question from Alice, where the people are coming from, and it looks like someone even tried to answer that question. So, Louise Cote says they come from French Africa, Congo, Rwanda, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, etc., in Middle East, Lebanon, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. I believe it's a way for RCC to diversify the origins of immigration. Good theory. Do you guys agree with this?
Yeah, I mean, largely this is all because Canada is a bilingual country. And so the federal government has been taking a look at the numbers of French speaking Canadians across the country and has been realizing that that level has been going down. So it's been decreasing steadily over the years. And so there was legislation passed federally to try to make sure that we are keeping that level of Francophone Canadian at a certain percentage of our population. And that was not specifically an immigration objective, right? That was um, a different piece of federal legislation. But the effect of that is that now the immigration minister is now tasked with making that happen because it's very difficult to have homegrown Francophones unless you are increasing Francophone education or unless you're increasing Francophone communities. And so the only real way to do that when we basically have zero population growth is to have an immigration target to say, okay, well, if we want to have more Francophones, then we need to bring in more Francophones.
Okay. All right. This question is from JB. Where could the additional PNP allocations be coming from?
Yeah. We can probably also bundle that with Batman's comment, and I'll address the levels plans collectively. So Batman says a couple of weeks ago, Prime Minister Carney indicated that H-1B workers will be included under the levels plan, which is due to be announced in November first week. Any inputs on that? So they really are probably going to make decisions the last week of October. Sometimes they do wait until the very last minute, but they have to have those annual levels plans for the coming years, how they're going to allocate those numbers, how many numbers of individuals that they're going to allow into the country as immigrants. And one thing we've seen in the past is that how they allocate those numbers and the proportions that they allocate directly impact you. So they are 3-year level plans, but really it's really 1 year at a time because they can adjust it just like they did last year. One of the things for those of you new to the game that they did was they took away in 2025 about 50% of the PNP allocation. So those provinces, the number of individuals that they could provide nominations to was slashed in half. In addition to steps they took was to remove tech from STEM, the category-based draws. So where we had a lot of tech positions that could be included in the STEM draws for the category-based ones, rounds of invitation, they basically removed them. And so it's very curious now that the cabinet, our prime minister, is trying to leverage or capitalize on Trump's decision to charge $100,000 per H-1B worker. And that's what was in the media. And there was some mention in the news that Prime Minister Carney they were going to do something within the levels plans to capture, or make it more attractive to come to Canada for these individuals. Well, it's so strange because at this stage they have determined that they're not worthy to be included in the STEM category. And so what could they do? Well, maybe they're changing their mind. Maybe they're deciding that they're going to, because these category-based draws, they change. Occupations are added, they're removed. Some categories are pulled and they've introduced new categories. And so it'll be really interesting to see what the Liberal government does here, probably at the end of October with the levels plans. So they could return the nominations back to the provinces and say, okay, you guys have learned your lesson, or now we feel it's more important to shift back to the provinces and give them more control. You're in a better position to do that. Maybe that's one of the solutions. Or maybe they are going to do something entirely different for tech and say, look, we're going to actually facilitate this particular group through their own category. Or maybe they're going to look at carving out some kind of new program, which I seriously doubt that would happen. But this is what immigration is all about. And Cabinet has the decision-making power as to the levels plans for our country. We have opportunities as lawyers to chime in and sometimes offer our thoughts and other stakeholders, but ultimately they make decisions based on their, global plans. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this.
Okay. Joe, our faithful follower, says, great to catch the trio. Kudos to you, Joe. Just to share with everyone, Joe is this viewer who acts on our tip and studies French. Joe, let us know how the progress going.
Yeah, how's the French coming, Joe?
Yeah.
Comment ça va?
Yeah.
Ça va bien?
Je voudrais un croissant café. That's all I can say. J'adore manger.
I used to remember I have a headache. It was something like Jamal la tête or something. I don't know what it was.
Okay.
There we go. Woo! But guys, I was seriously thinking, like for our local immigration partnership. So the federal government funds local community-based organizations to just help with the settlement of newcomers to various regions. And so many of them have actual settlement organizations, but they also fund grassroots kind of local organizations that are comprised of volunteers, and they call them local immigration partnerships. And so we had our kind of initial meeting to figure out where we were going to go with this new mandate, and the government remove some of the funding for that, but there's still some there. So one of the working groups that I'm on is the language-based working group, and there's no shortage of money for the French instruction. Like there's billions. And so so I've seriously considered actually taking some French classes, and why not? If there's opportunities to expand. Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I will mention for people that I've been doing consults with who said, well, how do I learn French? So one caution is this: be careful in terms of how you're learning French, because if you're doing something that would require a study permit and you don't have a study permit, you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to be studying without authorization. But there are many opportunities to do a purely online learning resource. And so you don't need a study permit in general, as long as it's 100% online. So there's no in-class invigilation where you have to take an exam. You're not at a designated learning institution. Just be careful about that. But one of the really good resources, just like Mark said, in addition to various nonprofit or community groups, take a look at your local library. So Igor and I are in Calgary, and one of the things, Calgary is fantastic. They have a digital learning resources library, and they also have like in-person language groups, and they also do training courses for different language tests. So take a look at your local resources, take a look at your local libraries, because there are a number of resources available that are not going to breach those study permit requirements, right? That are purely online, that are purely as a French as a second language kind of way to increase your competitiveness if you're looking at immigration options.
On this note, I wanted to pull up the comment from Bowrin. I'm in Canada now, my work permit expiring July 2026. I started to learn French hoping to be fluent by then. Seemed like it's the only way now. Well, I cannot do anything else but click this sound. Alright. I also wanted to pull up one other comment, and Mark, maybe that's you're the best person to talk about it.
Yeah.
So good morning. Purchasing the Express Entry course include the masterclass and the application specific questions answered. I'm trying to refer to someone.
Yeah. So understand that this course is super comprehensive. So it's a literal walkthrough of every part of the application process. There's sample documents, there's checklists, there's all kinds of information. There's even a few custom GPTs that we've created to help build out reference letters and find knocks and things like that. But in addition to that, every 2 weeks, I host a masterclass. Sometimes if I'm away, Igor fills in for me. But that masterclass is available every 2 weeks for you to come and get any question you want answered. And it's far more detailed than what we can do in a live, YouTube um, stream. And so it's more like a Zoom call almost, because you can jump on, you can talk. We just talk, face to face. You can post questions just like we do in this format. But when you purchase it, you have access to the course for life, and you have access to come back as many times as you need. So the best time to purchase the course is not when you already have the ITA. It's when you're even contemplating, should I go through express entry? Is it something for me? That's the best time, because you can come and you can ask any questions you want. And the beautiful part of it is that when you attend those live masterclasses, which are really kind of a glorified Q&A, the reality is you can learn from the other people that are asking questions. And you may not even think to ask this question, and someone brings it up. It's interesting because there's so much content in the course itself that you probably could go through without any need for a masterclass at all. But the reality is there are some nuances that come up that are just unique to you that I couldn't possibly contemplate in a course that's designed for everyone. And so that's why the masterclass is there. And that's all included for free with the purchase of the course. So yeah, that's how it works. And you can just go check out anyone else who's subscribed to it. And maybe there's some people that are watching today that could give a little their thoughts on it. But yeah, I don't think there's anything out there on the market that even touches this. But we're here to help you regardless. So
Yeah, we have an update from Joe. So Joe took a break in learning French because he just got burnt out. Work, kids, and French 3 hours daily is exhausting, but French is definitely the way nowadays. And I see the same kind of feedback about the process of learning a new language while also juggling like gazillion other balls, at the same time. It's just impossible for people to allocate time unless they can afford to, maybe work less hours, and at the same time learn French. But if you have like family, I certainly understand it's really hard. All right, so we have a question from M. Can non-express entry applicants submit a T13 work permit application together with spousal open work permit for spouse and study permit for children? And he already has an AUR, and there's a qualifier to add spouse and kids outside Canada. Let me guess. Should I hit this?
Yeah. Alicia, you want to dance around that?
We need more. We need way more information. So we can't give you specific legal advice because we need to understand a whole bunch.
Oh no. Oh no, we lost Alicia again. Okay. We need more information. We are not able to provide specific legal advice, at least to the degree that you need, because looks like Alicia's, we just kind of lost her.
Yeah.
Is she back now? Okay. But yeah, we would definitely encourage you to book a consult so that we can go through everything together. We would hate to just give you an answer without having the full context. And then the law is all about advising, legal opinions. Those things are all about the nuance, the little fine details. Everything, the whole advice we would give you can turn on just a simple little fact that you don't even think is important or relevant. So so we strongly encourage you to go and do that, Em.
All right, Alicia's calling again. Okay, we have her back. All right, so we've answered that question, Alicia, so let's move on. Maybe you can then tackle the next one. So tuning in from Grand Prairie, my background is in accounting, but I'm considering working in a shelter because based on my background, it seems like the prospects of getting a PR is slim. And I think the reason why Kaylee wanted to switch to work in shelter is because of this social workers being included in the let's see, it's healthcare and social services occupation category.
Yeah, many people are, and this is exactly what happens, you guys. So people see that now this occupation's on the list, and so then everybody piles in as fast as possible to try to get work experience in that area. And one danger I want to put out, I just had an email sent to me by a past client who said, hey, I'm thinking, if my employer will put this in the job description for my reference letter, that maybe I can classify my experience as this instead of what normally it would be this. And usually I'm just like, whoa. You want to put a stop to that, because at the end of the day, immigration, they are not dummies, and they know. And the last thing in the world you want is for them to allege misrepresentation, because the strategy involves not only adding in creatively some duties that may be performed, but what I see people doing wrongly is then stripping away other duties that are really primarily the ones you do and just not including them. So it gives the impression that you're more aligned with the one not code that actually fits in the category-based draws. So you need to be really, really careful with that. So careful.
Yeah, and so Kaylee, it is possible to do it correctly, right? Like if you are honest in your previous applications, you've honestly put in your work experience in your study permits and your PGWP applications. You've kept copies of your applications and you know what you've said for your past work experience. And now you're saying, well, you know what? I'm an accountant, but I can't get an ITA right now. So maybe I'm going to go back. And social work is hard because you literally usually have to have a degree in social work. So it's not one of those easy ones. But nursing aides, that's one of the ones where you don't actually have to have a certification in Alberta. So it's possible that people are looking at, and I have some clients who literally are IT workers who've accumulated over 1 year. So they're hitting their CEC as an IT worker. And then they said, you know what? I'm going to now pivot and spend 6 months as a nursing aide, simply because I know that that's probably my best pathway to try to get into the category specific healthcare draw. There's nothing wrong with that if you do it properly and you're honest in your previous application. You be really careful in terms of what are the employment requirements in your province for that type of occupation that you're looking at. And you make sure that you and your employer are on board about what your knock and your job duties actually are, that it for sure is falling within the knock that you think it is. And if you do that and you can acquire your 30 hours a week and you can make sure that you get your 6 months in full-time work or part-time equivalent. So if you do, 15 hours a week and you do that over a year, you can hit that 6-month full-time equivalent. People are doing that. They're being super strategic to try to figure out, well, how can I qualify for a category-based draw? And you don't have to have that job as your primary occupation. You just have to have 6 months in an eligible occupation within the last 3 years.
Mhm. I wanted to give a special shout out to one of the viewers in here, LJD, and all three of us know who that is. Hey, Mark and Igor, and Alicia, Lou here in Manila, just dropping by to say hello.
Globetrotter. Good to see you, Lou.
Yeah. Um, we're going to be traveling to CELO conference in Toronto in October. And hope to see you there.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be there. I don't know if you're speaking, LJ, but I can't remember from the list, but it'll be fun. I just figured out we actually have a government speaker finally. I'm going to be covering express entry, and so the last minute, the government speaker has been assigned. So we're just going to set up a call, and then I can figure out exactly what I'm going to be presenting on, which is going to be interesting. We got a lot piling in here for me at the end of the month. I'm going to do a presentation to the CBA Self section. I think that's on the 22nd. It's the Wednesday, the 22nd, maybe the 24th, can't remember. That one will be virtual. And then I think the next day or day after that, the BC CLE, I'm doing a presentation to the lawyers out there on the International Mobility Program and work permits and things like that, which is, I'm going to pull Alicia in to give me a little bit of intel and help me. She does a lot of that for our firm. So no shortage of things. Oh, and then I also saw someone from Grand Prairie, right? So we were actually going to go up to Grand Prairie as well this month to do a presentation, but we've decided to move that, I think, until March. So all of you up in Grand Prairie that are watching, Alicia and I are going to come up there and do a kind of a full day presentation seminar, meeting with different groups and just talking about the insanity. And it's probably good, Alicia, that we moved it, because then we'll have a better idea of what the levels plans look like for next year and have more to talk about. So awesome.
Yeah. All right, let's tackle a few more questions. So Sunshine Mackenzie says, hello everyone. Can one change jobs as a spousal open work permit holder while the principal applicant is waiting for the AOS application?
So, Sunshine,
Mm.
usually if you're a spousal open work permit holder, then you can work in any job in any occupation. The one thing that, we're not sure about is what did your principal applicant spouse say, or what did they claim in their worker EOI when they were doing their Alberta application? And where are they in that AOS application stage? Like, did they get a notification of interest? Have they submitted an application? Do they have a nomination from Alberta under AOS? We're just not really sure what's going on there. But in general, if you're on a spousal open work permit, you can usually switch jobs unless that is going to affect your spouse's worker points or eligibility, maybe based on province, if you're working out of province, and then that is going to question the intent of whether you guys would stay in Alberta. So there are some scenarios where it could be damaging to the permanent residence application that you'd have to be careful. Most of those would be if you're taking a job out of province.
Okay. I'm going to be bundling questions in topics so that we can focus on provincial nominee programs, then francophone questions, and then everything else. So before we proceed with questions, wanted to give a couple of shout outs. Again, people piling in, they saying hello to us, and we always love to see those comments. So Andy,
Yep.
our all-time
You.
follower, says hello from Ottawa. And I think we also had one more shout out from Levine from Toronto.
Great.
So, hello to both.
Go Jays. Go Jays. We were hoping, it was looking like they might sweep them last night. So we're hoping the Jays are going. I'll be back.
All right. Alicia, as we were talking about the AOS, I also wanted to pull up this question. Is express entry profile a requirement for an expression of interest? So essentially, do you need to have the profile to
Seriously. Now we're ready. I don't know why I wasn't wearing this before. Go Jays. Go Jays.
All right. So, Igor, maybe you can pop over to the Alberta AIP website. So when we're looking at Alberta, there are different categories. And the difficult to understand part of what's happened in Alberta is that we've moved to an expression of interest kind of system. And so even when you go in and you submit your worker EOI, and on that form, it's going to ask you, what application category are you interested in? And so a lot of people are saying, well, I'm saying I'm interested in Alberta Express Entry linked tech draw or whatever it is, or I'm interested in AOS. And what's been happening, I've received a number of consults recently where somebody had a profile. They were not eligible for AOS because their schooling was not completed at a post-secondary institution on the list in Alberta. They had gone to school in Ontario and they moved to Alberta and they've been working in Alberta with a job offer, but it still chose them under AOS. And then the crazy thing is it locks your profile. And so what's been happening is we've had a lot of AOS notification of interests, and then a couple days later, there's an Alberta Tech or an Express Entry that is a couple days later. And so people are super frustrated because they were not eligible for AOS. They got a notification of interest. They have no way to decline that notification of interest. It's going to sit there for 15 days. I have had some clients booked a consult. We went through everything. I don't like to tell people to decline or to delete their profile and create a new worker EOI unless I'm absolutely sure and I've talked to them in detail about their circumstances. But that's what this person did. And they literally got a notification of interest under Express Entry 2 days later, right? Because they had deleted that first profile and recreated a whole second one. You don't have to have a federal Express Entry profile if you want to put all your eggs in the AOS basket, but you do need to be sure that you fit all the AOS eligibility criteria. So to answer your question, Raquel, it's not required that you have a federal Express Entry profile, but then that means automatically you will not be eligible if they do a notification of interest that is going to include people who have a CRS of over 300, have an Express Entry federal profile that's been in the pool for less than 5 months. So most people want to try to maximize their chances. They want to be considered under both categories if they apply, if they qualify for them. So if you're only looking at AOS, you don't have to have that federal profile. profile, but then you're limited in what sort of draws you might obtain.
Okay. And on this note, there was another question from Joe, right? So, how are you sending intermittent invitations on AAP? Three of my workmates got invited through Accelerated Tech Pathway in a span of 2 previous weeks. The last tech draw was September 16. Was it just late invites?
Yeah, there does seem to be a delay. So even when people receive a notification of interest, it doesn't show up on the public website to say that they've actually done a notification of interest until a few days later. So that's one of the things that's been happening. So it could be that there's a little bit of a delay between when it's posted in terms of their processing inventory and when they've actually sent out those notifications of interest.
Okay. Now let's proceed to Super Chats group of questions. So 2 Super Chats came from Eric. So he has 2 questions. Got nominated under ONAP as electric engineer. Wes gave me a 3-year diploma level in May 2015, and then I applied to IQAS in March 2023 and got a 3-year bachelor program with focus on electronics engineering.
Now
So
this is interesting. So is Eric saying that so they did Wes downgraded it to a diploma. Then he went through IQAS and they said, nah, we think it's more closer to a bachelor's program. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so the second part of the question is, the West info was shared to RCC in 2015 and also in 2020. 5-year expiry is coming soon. What's your take on it? How do I navigate the situation?
There's no sticky point about this. When you complete your express entry profile, you just use the IQAS assessment. You don't need to even mention WES. At the end of the day, the assessment that you include, they're all educational credential assessments. One isn't better than another. You are free to use the assessment that is in your best interest. And regardless of what was assessed in the past, IQAS is a valid assessment and they have the ability to change. Remember that even WES has changed their tune on things. So for a long time, they were downgrading Indian master's degrees from some institutions as just considering them as being a postgraduate diploma. And then there was a statement that came out and said, okay, now we've changed. We're going to equate these more to masters. So there's no need to pull up your old WES and address it in a letter of explanation, and you don't need to do that. Alicia, what are your thoughts on this?
I would say you don't have to include the Old West, but I would put it in the LOE. Just say, look, I used another for the same period of education in the past. I used a West report, but I am using the IQAS. I'm eligible and entitled to use the IQAS as per IRCC policy, and that's the one that I'm relying on for this application.
Okay. So the next super chat is pretty tricky. Okay. So does having a CIPS ISP certification helps you get the 10 points in AAP, though your job is not a regulated job in Alberta?
Okay,
So
this is Alicia's master. She's a pro at this one.
yeah.
Okay, this is a super complex, tricky issue, and it's coming up for more and more people. I have worked extensively drilling through this for 2 different clients now. For one has hired me to help with their review of their AAIP application, and the other one was in a consult. And this has come up, and I think it's coming up more and more now because of these FAQs. So Igor's pulled it up. There's the frequently asked questions for answers for common questions on the AAIP website. When you go down, there's that section on regulated occupation certification. And so you will see that when you're looking at the worker EOI form, it asks you questions about, is this a regulated occupation? This is a little bit of a minefield, and it really depends on a number of factors. And normally, federally, if it is a regulated occupation and it's a mandatory regulated occupation based on your NOC, and it's a requirement of your job that you be regulated, like a nurse or a doctor or whatever it is that's mandatory regulated, you have to have that certification. And that's easy. You can definitely say, yes, I do have that certification. However, this CIPS under the ISP is super complex because I have seen people in a whole bunch of different NOCs trying to claim this. When you look through the website, so if you take a look, it says when to claim points for regulated occupations. Then it says, well, you can only do it if you go through step 2 of the foreign qualification recognition. So, all right, then you go through and you open the link in a new tab and you go through, well, what do they mean? Who's on the step 2 of the foreign qualification recognition? Okay, well, then we go through and we see, oh, there's a bunch of different subcategories. And so if you go down to the sections in the gray boxes, you've got different expanded fields for business, finance, administration, and management. So that's where this one is. So if you open up that business, finance, administration, and management tab at the very top, yeah, you will see information technology professional. So this is what we're talking about. What do they mean by information technology professional? That's really important because if you click on that and you go to Pro and you go to the Canadian Information Processing Society, CIPS is going to have different designations. One of them is the ISP designation. Most of the time, and this is where you've got to go talk to CIPS and talk to them and look at it, but the ISP designation, as far as I understand, requires that you have at least 8 years as a professional in this occupation before you ought to be getting this ISP designation. So it really depends. What is your NOC? Has your employer said that that is your NOC? And is it a requirement of your job that you be an ISP? Do they require 8 years of experience in this? And is that what you're doing in your actual job? So this is a gray area for sure. I would highly recommend you book a consult because I'd want to talk to you about all this, because there's a risk that if you claim those 10 points and you don't have a basis for it, that they can refuse your application or they can say you're misrepresenting in order to get an immigration advantage. So you've got to be careful on this one for sure.
Yeah. And if you wonder, how do I book a consult? Let me also show you how to do it. So you go to our website at holthelaw.com, or you just type Holthe Immigration Law in Google. You'll get to our website, you click Speak to a Lawyer, and then you scroll down and you select Alicia, and you select the duration of your consult. Alicia, is there any particular duration of the consult that you recommend to discuss this particular issue, or you would leave it to the person to decide on their own?
Yeah, so people can book a 25-minute consult or they can book the 50-minute consult. If your question, OC, is specifically about CIPS and ISP designation certification, I want to see your resume. I want to see your job offer. I want to see your employment letter from your company about what they say your job duties are. I want to see what NOC codes you've claimed. I want to see what you've got in your Federal Express entry profile, as well as what you put in previous versions of any worker EOIs. And I want to make sure that you do actually have those certificates, right? So when was that certificate issued in relation to when you were creating your profiles?
Yeah, and one of the cool features that we have in our firm is that we're straight to the point. So before the consult, you will receive an intake form where you can explain your situation, upload supporting documents, prepare, help us prepare for the call. So when we connect, we don't just start learning about your situation. We already know who you are, what's the scoop, and we'll get straight to the point. All right, let's see. So we do have a couple more questions. I think, let's see. I will just use. I will switch to an expert-centric group of questions. Okay, so first one from Emmanuel. We stated $25,000 as available funds for our PR application. At the same time, we've wrote a letter of explanation requesting an exemption since we have a valid job offer and authorized to work in Canada. Is that okay?
Okay. So in order to answer this, we need to understand what you mean by a valid job offer and authorization to work in Canada. So the rules are pretty clear when it comes to settlement funds that job offers are generally job offers supported by labor market impact assessments. However, if you have worked, so I don't know, you say you have authorization to work in Canada. If you have worked and you're then drawn under the Canadian Experience class, then you are, then you're exempt from requiring those funds. But yeah.
Igor, do you want to pull up my article on our blog about arranged employment? Because this is exactly one of the wrinkles on when arranged employment really matters. So just like Mark said, you're absolutely correct. If you were drawn under an ITA and it says CEC, like go take a look at your invitation to apply. If it says you were drawn under CEC, even if it was a category-based round of invitations, then you're good. Then you just say, look, I don't need to provide settlement funds. If, however, you are under a targeted category-based draw and they actually drew you under FSW, so take a look at what it says on your ITA again, but if they drew you under FSW, then you would normally have to provide settlement funds unless you can show that you did have a valid arranged employment offer of employment. So that really depends on one of these scenarios. So just like Mark said, normally the rule is you have to have an employer that has an LMIA. So you have to be a named worker and the employer has received an LMIA approval, and then they've added you as a named worker and you're going to get that work permit. You have that work permit and it's employer specific. It's a closed work permit. Sometimes there are scenarios where you can have a IMP work permit. So one that's not under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, it's under the International Mobility Program. Mobilité francophone is one of these. Some of the IEC or some of the, like the young professional IECs or some of the intercompany transfers are also under the IMP. But if you are in that circumstance where you are on non-LMIA based but employer specific work permit, you have to have worked there for a year and your employer has to say that they intend to continue to employ you for another year after you get PR before you can validly say that you're claiming arranged employment. So unless all those things happen, you got to be careful on whether you do have to provide settlement funds.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. So the next question is from Ankit. I did my medicals in 2022 in October. Do I need to get new medicals done for my CEC file? And so what Ankit is wondering about is this temporary public policy, right? Allowing to use the medicals that were completed within the last 5 years.
Yeah. So while you're probably pulling that up, Igor, the actual policy, in short, if it's been within 5 years, there's a very good chance that you won't need to obtain a new one. So the policy was last updated, and you can see it's they plan on keeping it for a very long time. So exempt, that exemption will be until October 5th, 2029. So they must have just updated that. And essentially, if you completed your medical within 5 years of basically submitting the time in which you submit this application, if it's been within 5 years, then we just include an actual copy of your e-medical information sheet. Although technically you could just provide the IME number from that previous e-medical information sheet with your application. But we usually just provide a copy of it and then, an explanation confirming, hey, we're aware of this policy. I think it might be eligible. Because now they're asking for upfront medicals, right? So you need to provide those upfront. But this is an alternative.
Yeah, and the one wrinkle on this is just be careful that there wasn't something on that medical that showed that follow-up was required, right? So the last bullet point on there was that, you were low risk. So.
Okay. The next express entry related question is from Parva. Next trade draw. Any chance of CRS 500? Oh, let's see. I'm just pulling up the trade.
Well, trade was under 500. So if you have 500, Parva, or right around 500, I should say. It was crazy. It was a little bit more, wasn't it? What was it? 50?
505.
Just trade 50. Yeah. Yeah. If they were to do another one right away, I suspect that would probably drop. But do you guys see what's happened here? Like there's a reason that trade occupations are 505. Because individuals who have very high human capital, who may have a master's degree or an MBA, are taking jobs in the trade so that they can qualify through the trade category. Because like we talked about, it's 6 months of continuous full-time within the previous 3 years. And so many people are shifting and doing that in hopes that they can get through these trade draws.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough because we haven't had a trade draw, right? October of last year was the last trade draw,
Yeah.
and so that's a big span of time.
Big gap. Yeah. And if you look at the last year, I think, what did they do? How many total was it? I think it was it 3,000, I think? Two 1500s for 2024 or close. Yeah, it was
Two
actually
1800s. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if they intended to do the same number, then I guess there's still a chance we could see another trade draw in the fall here, but it's hard to know for certain.
Yeah. All right. So the next express entry related question, and maybe okay. All right. I'll pull up the question and then I will pull up a comment from Joe. So this
Sure.
question is from Alvin. Is there a possibility that you can still get an ITA even without Canadian work experience under French-speaking category-based draw? Great question, and you will like the answer.
Yeah, well, it's possible, absolutely. In fact, if you don't have any Canadian work experience, you're probably one of the only individuals that might have a shot in one of the French-speaking draws. So you could see what did we look at there? 430 points.
432.
Yeah, it was
432.
the last round of invitations, that big 4,500 draw just recently. So it's absolutely possible, Alvin. Absolutely.
Yeah, and look at this draw, like
Yeah,
379.
379. That's when all it takes is 7,500 people being invited.
Exactly.
Those numbers.
All right, so as promised, here's the comment from Joe. The express entry course is so comprehensive, you're left with barely any questions. Most likely more personal. That's when you go to the masterclass. Best of both worlds, highly recommend the course. So this relates to all of those express entry questions. Like if you wondering like what's express entry, can I get a invitation under the category, can I not, without Canadian work experience? Just subscribe to the course, so you'll get the answer. And if you're wondering like where do I get this course, you can go to our website at holthelaw.com, and right at the top we have blog and resources, and you can find the Express Entry Accelerator in here, or you can search Canadian Immigration Institute and you'll get the course in here. And if you don't want to search, you can just hit one of those links in the description under this video and it will take you straight to the website.
Yeah.
All right. Next. So, this one's good. So Sass is wondering, is it correct to indicate the start date of Canadian work experience at the time of the postgrad work permit application? So essentially, if someone was working as a student and then submitted a postgrad work permit application, how do they declare this work experience? And I have my own strategy how I do it, but curious to see what you guys have to say.
So, Sess, you can only claim Canadian work experience as of the day that you submit your PGWP application. So whatever day that is, then as long as you had a valid study permit, you were authorized, and this is another issue that's come up, is on your study permit, it should have that condition at the bottom of it that says authorized to accept off-campus work under 186 sub V, right? And so if you are authorized to work off campus, you're doing some sort of credit-based 8-month or longer program, full-time studies that leads to a diploma or a degree, and you're PGWP eligible, then you should be able to submit that application for a PGWP, and then as of the date that that PGWP is.
Oh no,
Uh-oh.
we lost her.
It happened again. It happened again. Mark, do you want to continue on this?
Yeah. Well, just to kind of continue what Alicia was talking about there,
You
the
should
date
be
that you
eligible
start.
to start full-time work, and that should be counted.
Okay. All right.
Oh no, I'm
Well,
gone again.
she's out kind of back in? Okay.
Let's go.
We'll let her back in. There we go. You froze a little bit, Alicia. You had some good advice going there. I didn't add anything more. So you just kind of were at the stage where if you've got, the job and you're working and it's after you file your postgrad, do you want to wrap that up? Or maybe
Oh
not.
no.
Okay. Okay, so just to tie a ribbon around what Alicia was saying, as long as the work you're trying to claim is after you have submitted your postgrad work permit, so everything you're eligible, you've done everything right, the day you submit your postgrad work permit, you can start to count that work experience. So you would then start work for that company, and you can count, the full-time work experience from that date, essentially. But you have to be really careful that you're not working in between the day you receive the letter confirming completion of your educational credential and then the time in which you actually submit your postgrad work permit. Now, most prudent people would have that postgrad work permit all queued up, ready to go. The moment you get that letter from the university or the college saying you've completed your educational requirements, you've got it ready to go so that there's no delay. Because if there's delays in between there, remember that once you receive that confirmation, you have to stop working until you file your postgrad work permit. So just be prudent. Be prudent with that.
And it's also important that you don't just because essentially, you will end up in a situation where you go to your employer, you say, I need a confirmation of my employment, and the employer would say, okay, you worked since whatever 2019,
Yeah.
but you only got your postgrad since whatever 2021, let's assume, right? And then in your work history section, you would declare only 2021 as a start date, but then how do you account for this time when you worked before 2021? You need to put that in your personal history section. Don't hide it, right? Make sure that you account for the whole experience, but you only claim points for the time that you're eligible for.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. Okay. So another Express Entry related question is, what are the possibilities of STEM this year? What are the possibilities of SAM this draw?
Yeah. No
T.
T.
Yeah.
What is the possibility of insurance brokers this draw?
So, John, we lost our crystal ball. We don't have it with us, but yeah, we can kind of
It
take a
broke.
look.
It broke. It just can't handle it. It just
Mark's rubbing his round hat.
My Blue Jays, go Jays.
We've seen less STEM draws, right? But maybe if the government says, well,
oh no.
want to try to
Poor
capture
Alicia's
some of those American workers. Oh, still gone.
just
Hey? All
kind
right.
of cutting out a little bit there. That's all right. We've had a pretty good run, you guys, with connectivity. We've had a pretty darn good run. Usually we never have any issues with bandwidth or buffering or anything like that. And so every once in a while, I think our followers will forgive us if we have a little bit of an issue, especially when we're 3 different locations doing this live and hopefully people, understand. So yeah, do you want to give her another try, Alicia? You're a little bit weak, but your signal, but give it a try.
Yeah, I don't know. I have redundant internet, so I tried switching over to the other internet and it's still fuzzy, so I don't know, guys.
It's okay.
Anyways, I think STEM is probably less likely unless they take a look and they say, oh, well, maybe we do want to try to capture some of those people who were in the US on the H-1B who now have their Canadian H-1B visas. Maybe they do. Maybe they do a STEM draw at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I feel the same way, especially with the reporting from the Prime Minister on steps that they're going to be taking to entice the high-skilled H-1Bs from the US. I helped so many of those H-1Bs with the H-1B open work permit, and very few actually came until more recently. As positions end in the US, as people run out of time, they realize, oh, we don't have a prayer. Then they start thinking, okay, well, I do have this open work permit to come to Canada. Maybe that's the route I should go. And I have to have discussions with them about the feasibility of actually getting permanent residence in the limited time that they have on the open work permit. So these are all discussions that come through the consultation process. So if you fit into any of these categories, don't hesitate to reach out and book a consult with Alicia, Igor, or myself, and we can help you navigate and strategize. Because the earlier you can get to us, you guys, the better. Because then we have an opportunity to advise you if you need to make a course correction. There's nothing worse than someone coming saying my work permit's going to expire in a month. what can I do to stay? What permanent resident program can I follow? And I'm usually like, oh boy, this just ain't gonna happen probably for you. You're out of time. So
Yeah. It looks like Alicia is frozen again,
yeah,
but
we'll continue for. It's probably a good time to maybe wrap it up now.
yeah, yeah. I do have a couple of questions lined up, so
Sure,
I'll
let's
just
do it.
pull those
Let's
up.
hit those.
You can stop
Mm,
this one.
go Jays, go Blue
Okay.
Jays.
All right, so this one's a super chat. Let's see. Okay, so Alicia says to wrap it up without her.
Yeah,
Let me just close this, switch to a different scene, and pull up the
there
comment.
we
Okay,
go.
so Eric says, my wife is giving birth in 2 weeks. Congratulations on that. Should I send my
Congratulations.
non-express entry application now or wait it till the baby is here to include the documents and the applications, any implications to the application? So, first question is, where is your wife? Is she in Canada? Like, because if the baby is born in Canada, the baby is a Canadian citizen essentially, and then you can just send a web form essentially saying, "Okay, I have a new Canadian-born baby."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, Eric, is just understanding the timing. There may be reasons with your express entry, your non-EE application. I'm assuming maybe it's hard to know what it is, if it's a spousal sponsorship. Yeah, or if it's a PNP, application. There's a lot that are non-express entry, so I'm not quite sure which route. If you're sponsoring your spouse, or if their spouses and the baby's going to be born, like Igor said, in Canada or abroad. Yeah, you've got flexibility with little ones. So if you need to update a file, you can do that. What I pay attention to is if there's any deadlines for you to submit your permanent resident application. If you have lots of time and the baby's going to be born right away, remember you still need to get a birth certificate, all the other associated documentation for that little one for your PR anyway. So sometimes it just doesn't make sense. If you can submit it now, do it now, and then update it later.
Okay. This question is from Harsh. Is there any reason I can be denied entry at
Mm.
the airport if I'm on a closed work permit? Went back home for about 10 months due to personal reason and blah, 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 blah. We don't have the continuation of the question, but
Yeah.
it
Well,
so
yeah.
resembles my yesterday's consult. But
Yeah. Go ahead, Igor. Fire away.
there are a ton of reasons why you may not be admitted to Canada. Like having first of all, your closed work permit is not a travel document. You cannot travel just because you have a closed work permit. So if you're from a visa exempt country, then maybe you have an ETA that's valid, and then you may appear at the border. If you're not from an ETA country, then you will need a TRV to travel to Canada. If you don't have a valid TRV, your closed work permit will not be of any help. So next, you got to the border. That's your right to appear before the officer if you have a TRV or an ETA. But then the ultimate decision whether to let you in rests with an officer, right? So the officer will look at for how long will your work permit still be valid? Do you have a confirmation from your current employer that you're returning back to work at the same location, at the same job title, with the same employer? They will question you why you were absent for so long. And most importantly, you need to convince the officer that you're coming to Canada with a temporary intent so that you will go back after your work permit expires, before your work permit expires, not after. So it's entirely up to the officer to question you and make a decision. Are they convinced or not that you will leave Canada at the end of your authorized stay? And it's entirely on you to convince the officer that you will actually do it. So to answer your question simply, there are a ton of reasons why the officer may not let you in, and that's exactly what happened with one of my clients from a very recent consult. They were just traveling, and they had a spouse in Canada. Not going to be diving into details to preserve the confidentiality of the discussion, but the officer said, yes, I see you traveled in the past, but look, like you have tons of stuff with you this time. How can I let you in when I see that you basically just moving half of your house to Canada right now, like in this huge van? Are you a genuine visitor? Like, are you coming here temporarily? So, crossing the border with your valid work permit is not a slam dunk. You need to be prepared and be prepared for the worst. And Mark, maybe you can also add some of your personal experiences working at the border. Like,
Yeah. So it's interesting when we have a lot of the times we see spousal sponsorship situations, especially American and Canadian. And we want to come back. Where do we apply? Should we do it from within Canada? Should I do it before we return back? Sometimes the couples are together and have been married for many years. Other times they're separated, traveling back and forth to visit one another. And you never want to just load up your U-Haul and come across. So that's a reality. But you do want to make sure that you're providing sufficient evidence of your temporary intent, that you still have a residence, you still have a job. If you're working as a digital nomad, that's also totally good. But there may be very good reasons why you seek to enter as a visitor to be with your spouse in Canada and then have your spouse sponsor you. But the border officers are not trained in all aspects of immigration. They're just not. There's too much for them to know. So they're jacks of all trades. They are good at search and seizure, interrogating on the good side. On the immigration side, there are some officers that are legacy officers that have a little bit more experience, but you have to be prepared that you have to make the case why you should be able to be granted entry, and why you will abide by any temporary conditions imposed on you, which may be when your visa, your time in Canada expires, that you will return back to your home country. So all those things play a role. It's quite a multifaceted thing. If you're looking at taking a run at the border, or you've got one of these situations, book a consult.
Okay. And the last couple of questions. So first, a shout out from Fuad. Hello, Mark and team. Thank you for the valuable content. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Yep, let me just pull up the effects. And so then Fuad follows up with a question: do we need a police clearance from a country where I lived in 2009 for 12 months? It's been 16 years and I have no records. And maybe I'll just add a qualifier here. It really depends on the program that you apply for. Because like for some programs, they ask just for 10 years. For some programs, they ask from the age of 18 and forward, right? So, but Mark, what are the rules for police clearance certificates?
Well, this is stuff that we cover in detail in the course, Igor. In fact, we have a whole video just on police clearance certificates, together with a whole bunch of sample documents, which is a really, really good lead-in. We are in the process of updating our database of police clearance certificates. So if you guys are in the process of applying for express entry, you are seeking out your police clearance certificates, maybe you can just tell people, if you would be so kind as to share those with us, I will redact them so all your identifying information is gone. And you can just email those to info@holthelaw.com. And I would love to include those in our Express Entry Accelerator course in the police clearance section, because we love to have updated police clearance certificates that we can use for individuals to confirm whether or not they think they have the right police clearance certificate. So if you do have one, send an email to info@holthelaw.com right on the screen, and we would be so, so grateful to you. All right.
Yeah. And Mark, I just wanted to share this with you.
Sure.
So,
let's see. What do we got?
Answer Fuad's question. I will have to pull up this overlay that I've created for the last live stream. Well, it depends.
It depends. There you go. That's exactly it.
So that's going to be my favorite overlay.
So WID, and then my other favorite one that I used, especially with the H-1B category when I was doing those large master classes, I did a lot of IDRMs. IDRM, which is, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So you can go both ways. So yeah.
And we'll wrap up with another question from Chrissy, because I've been trying to find a bunch of French or Francophone related questions. So she was just wondering, like, it sounds like speaking, reading, writing French will be a requirement for all of Canada, regardless of other factors. Is that the case? My family of 5 has only 2 Francophones.
Yeah, well, understand, Chrissy, the principal applicant is the only one really that needs to speak French if you want to be able to immigrate to Canada from outside. Once you're here, whether or not immigration says you're going to get more points if you live outside of Quebec and you speak French, in practice, everywhere else is Anglophone. So it's English speaking. So people that are studying French, they may have sufficient to pass the test and get immigration, but they're not going to have a lot of opportunities to practice French outside of Quebec because it's all English speaking. So your whole family doesn't need to speak French fluently. And hopefully the two people that are fluent one can be the principal applicant on a express entry or permanent resident application.
Yeah, and Ankit just sent a really good question. Do we get consultation with masterclass?
Not a formal consultation. Basically, you can come and you can get your questions asked, specific questions. But no, I don't provide, a full comprehensive legal advice. That's only through the paid consultation process.
Yeah, and you probably don't want to rely on the advice that was given to you after studying your file for like 2 or 3 minutes, right? Like we need to spend time, learn about your stuff, like investigate all, like turn all stones, and know everything about your file before we can give you something that you can confidently rely upon.
Yeah.
So on this note, again, thank you everyone for sending your questions. Apologies to those whose question was not pulled up. We just have limited time, limited capacity. But if you still have any questions, we'll see you next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. It's very possible that Mark will not be there.
Yes, I'm going to be traveling down south.
Yeah.
Playing a little pickleball tournament. Yeah. If any of you are heading down to the Huntsman World Seniors Games, that's what happens when you're 50 years old. I'm 53 now. You get to play with the old timers. So we have our little pickleball tournament down there. I think there's 1,200 athletes playing just in pickleball alone. And it's like a massive kind of event. There's like track and field, basketball, you name it. And it's all the old timers playing. So,
I hope you're gonna get your birthday present before you travel.
I still haven't
another hint.
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, we'll figure it out. It's all good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
See you next week.
You bet. Go Jays. Go